Hello, good morning, everyone. We'll give everybody a couple minutes to get on. I'm going to pin Ned so everybody can see him.
All right.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our PCT Safety Talk. Ned has a lot of great things in store for us. He was just up near the San Jacinto area, right? You were near the tram. Is that
Top of the
correct,
tram,
Ned?
yeah. Top of the
So he
tram.
was there. Yes. So he'll give us all of his insight that he just saw yesterday from near the PCT. It wasn't on the PCT, but near the PCT.
Pretty close.
Yep. All right. Maybe another minute or two, and then we'll get started. I hope everybody's doing good this morning. Oh, good evening. Okay, Peter, where are you? Where are you in the world? Where's everybody in the world? Let me start up the chat. We usually say where we're from in the chat. Hi from SoCal. UK, nice. Thanks for joining, Germany. Thank you for joining. It must be evening there as well. All right, let me admit a couple more people. We have a smaller group today, which is kind of nice because for the Q&A session, it'll be maybe a little bit easier. 6 p.m. in the UK. Okay, good evening. Washington,
It's not too bad.
nice. Yeah, Washington's on our time zone. There's just Mike. Okay. All right. Couple notes here. I need to put a lot of information for you guys in the chat, so I'll do that once Ned starts talking. Hello from New York. Hi, Lisa. New York, nice. So I'm assuming a lot of you guys, or most all of you guys, are going to be doing the PCT maybe this year. So welcome, NorCal, west of Carson Pass. Okay, hey, John. I recognize your name. I feel like we've seen you before. Hello. Okay, we'll probably have other people trickle on. We had about 56 signups for this meetup, so we'll have some more people trickle on most likely. So let's get started. It's 10:03. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm your host for today. Hello, my name is Carol Coyne. My trail name is Cheer. And I'm the founder of a hiking community, a through hiking, long distance hiking community called Througher. That's short for Through Hiker. And our mission is to connect hikers and trail angels before, during, and after trail. So we hope we're going to give you some good information today. A lot of you maybe have not done a long distance hike yet. I remember when before I hiked the PCT, I was nervous about the snow conditions in 2019. So hopefully this session just gives you more information. And just as a disclaimer as well, Ned has so much, and we'll go over this in a second too. Ned has so much experience in the backcountry, snow safety, so many other things. And he is giving you advice based off of his extensive experience, but at the end of the day, you have to decide what you do in the backcountry. Everybody's skills are different. So somebody might be comfortable using crampons, other people might be comfortable using microspikes, etc. So you ultimately have to do, this is for your information, but you have to do research and decide what is right for you because everybody's skill sets are different. Everybody's comfort level is different in certain situations. So that's just a disclaimer before we get into it. So how this meeting's going to go, we're going to have Ned give us some updates on the PCT trail conditions because he was very close to the PCT literally yesterday. So great insight. And anything else that he wants to share about safety, PCT related sort of thing. And then we're going to get into a Q&A where you yourself can have a back and forth with Ned. I can also facilitate that if you don't want to raise your hand and speak in front of the audience. We can also utilize the chat. So we'll go over that when we're ready for the Q&A. This meetup is scheduled for an hour and 30 minutes. We can go beyond that, Ned. I'm not sure if you're able to go beyond that. Last time we did for quite a bit.
Yeah, I can go as long as people want.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I do have to drop off after an hour and 30. I have another meeting I need to go to, but we will make you the host at that point, and then you can take it from there, Ned. So let me admit a couple more people. So yes, hour and 30 minutes. I'm going to be sending an email. We have a lot of great resources via Througher. We've had Ned on last year. He did an extensive series about a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about. So we have that on our YouTube channel. If you missed something and you want to go back. And so that's on our YouTube channel. We have a mailing list that you can join if you want to get more information about all of our other meetups coming up. And let's see. we'll have a link for Mountain Education if you want to connect with Ned more afterwards. And Ned, I know you are introducing kind of a video school as well. So we can promote that if that's up and running. If it's not, then we'll just tell everybody to go to the YouTube channel for now.
Well, it's all so new. I'm not sure if it's up and running or not, but I did have a
Okay.
very cool discovery the other day. All of the videos that we shot in 2010 when we had a Hollywood sponsored camera and stuff like that, and we were on the John Muir Trail and in the snow and stuff. We had tons of instructional videos, and God knows what happened to them. They're all digitized and stuff, but I think I found them. So that's pretty exciting.
Okay, great. So we'll keep our mailing list updated. And Ned, you also have a mailing list. So we'll give everybody the information after this meeting via email. So you'll be getting an email either from Carol Coyne, which is me, or info@thruer.com. So be on the lookout for that today. That will have everything you need, including more information about watching this recording again. This will be available in a couple days for you guys via our mailing list. So you have to make sure you're on our mailing list to get this recording link. So that's just kind of the announcements for the beginning, but let's just get to Ned. So I'm going to introduce you, Ned, like I always do with all of your credentials. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people already know you and already know your extensive experience, but just in case people don't on this call, Ned is a thru hiker. He hiked the PCT, he's hiked the CDT. He has been a wilderness instructor for 40 years, and he's been on ski patrol near Lake Tahoe. He has been a wilderness EMT and so much more. So we are so excited, Ned, to hear more about what you just saw near the PCT and all of your tips and tricks today. And we're excited to get into the Q&A with you later. So with that, go ahead, Ned.
Yeah, all right, Carol, I got it. Hey, good morning, everybody, or good evening to, was it Peter out in UK? I appreciate you have questions. You want to know how things go out there. You want to have a safer hike. And that's what I'm trying to bring. A website, certainly, and hopefully lots of on-snow in-person classes, as well as opportunities to shoot some video of how things actually happen or how things work. You know, the details of a self-arrest, the fact that you can post hole and then post hole again in the same hole, depending upon the ice layers in the snowpack. Some stuff like this, people simply don't understand. But when you realize that this is the composition of a snowpack, for example, you're a little more wise and careful about what you're doing, because all it takes is, heck, as we saw recently, and seriously, unfortunately, and sadly, to a young woman in LA on Mount Baldy, who her fall and untimely death was caused by a flying piece of ice. And I have yet to hear whether that was a little piece of ice or a big piece of ice, but nevertheless, it knocked her off balance. And that's all it takes. Just whatever it takes, like wind or something about your footing that changes and you fall, that could be it. So she wasn't exactly prepared. She had a lot of experience, but she was just caught off guard, I believe. And unfortunately, it was to her demise. I did have a chance to talk to the helicopter pilot that flew her out, and so I learned some of those details. But anyway, so let me get into what I saw yesterday. I was up at the top of the tram, Palm Springs tram, on Mount San Jacinto, which is, I think, 5 miles to the east, something like 5 miles, maybe not. To the east of the Pacific Crest Trail, which is, 2 miles by trail or something like that from the trailhead in Idlewild. So I guess that would be 7 miles then from Idlewild. So we were up at about 8,400, and we were anticipating a storm coming in. It didn't really. We barely even had any wind, so the conditions were fantastic. But what presented, and as far as snowpack, and what I want to make you guys realize, snow and however its condition is presenting at the time you're putting your weight on it will dictate how you move over it. If it's soft and powdery and you're wallowing through it, it may or may not have an ice layer underneath. which implies, just so that you understand, powder snow comes from, a fresh fall, fresh new snow. And then it can also be added to by wind transported snow blowing off the ridges and adding to the snow wherever you are. And, ambient temperatures overnight, which have to do with the freeze thaw cycles, may allow for an ice layer or multiple ice layers in the snowpack. Well, what we saw was about 2 inches, maybe 3 inches of a powder on the surface, probably just wind blowing snow off the trees. So that's pretty normal. Lands on the ground, lands on a freeze thaw surface caused by the sunlight that has come in after all of these atmospheric river events. I definitely held your weight. You did not need snowshoes, but if you happen to step heavily or want to punch through that ice layer, you could punch through quite easily if you put some weight on it. And then your foot would drop about 18 inches to 2 feet through a depth hoar type powder. Depth hoar is like feathers in the snowpack, created by really cold air temperatures and preceded by warm moisture coming up off the snowpack. But anyway, not to get technical. So the potential for post holing is pretty great up there right now. There was a substantial ice layer finally to stop us from post holing any further. And it wasn't a big deal if you weren't satisfied with your balance or the support you felt under your feet. All you got to do, you post hole once. And if you go too far and you don't feel comfortable about it and you want to make your landing stronger, you make the surface of the hole bigger and you push all that snow down to the bottom and you pack it in. And so that's what we were doing. The objective yesterday was largely just to teach skills in the morning and then do a navigational clinic in the afternoon. So as far as I could tell, the whole area was pretty much like that. I could see almost all the way down to Apache Peak in the trail along the Desert Divide coming up from a Paradise Valley Cafe, and it's all white. So the last thing I think I probably want to say, when you can walk on the snow, when it's got an ice layer in the snowpack, or even on the top, if it's crusty, whatnot, but it's holding your weight, and you can jump up and down, or you can try and punch through it just to make sure you understand how much weight it can take, and it's pretty solid. Doesn't make any difference how deep the snow is. Everybody goes like, oh my God, they've had 500 inches of accumulated snowfall this winter. 500 inches is like, what is it, 20, 30 feet, or I don't know. But that's not, it settles, it consolidates. It's during the winter that you have all this powder and stuff. But by the time you guys get out there, and even right now, we've had some time for enough solar energy to come in and consolidate and settle and pack down the snowpack. You can walk on top of it just fine. So it doesn't make any difference whether it's there's a foot of snow out there come May 1st, or there's still 12 feet. I think the most I've ever had was close to 20 feet. And I don't remember what year that was, but I was teaching for years between Cottonwood Pass or Kennedy Meadows South and Kearsarge Pass. So I've seen drought winters, I've seen heavy winters, I've seen frozen and snowed over creeks and lakes that you simply can walk across. And that's all normal if you're in there early enough and there's a sufficient snowpack. But drought years just means that there isn't enough snow that has fallen to completely cover the lakes, not enough cold, not enough ice to freeze up the lakes. And so you can't walk across lakes like we normally can. And then here I go. All right, Carol, I'm on a roll. Crap. Remember also, I thought I was on my last point. Remember also that in the Sierra, you don't have like what you have back east and maybe in other climates where it's just bitter cold, but with not a hell of a lot of snowfall. where you get a lot of ice on lakes, and it's all about how much ice. And so before you get the ice hockey guys out there and all that, you drill through and you find out how many inches of ice are really there, and then you get the green light to go ahead if there's enough. In the Sierra, you do get ice in the beginning of the year, but with 10 feet, I mean, snow is frozen water, so it's still, except for the air in the snow, you still got to look at a certain amount of weight per foot of snow. What it does is the snow will sit on the ice of a lake, and then as it gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, it pushes down on the ice and it cracks. Water rushes back up into the snowpack, which could be feet in depth. And what you'll get is, on top of a lake, you don't get so much that frozen ice, but you get frozen snow, water saturated frozen snow that could be 2 or 3 feet deep, with additional snow on top. So if you're out there and you cannot find a way to get water, you're probably going to be melting snow, which means you got to bring more fuel, or you're going to be digging into creeks or digging into lakes. And so that's what I've done, and know how thick this frozen snowpack is on lakes. For the most part, creeks will have, here we go. Creeks will have openings. In the winter, there's not a whole lot of water volume in these massive creeks that are developed come June 1st in the thaw. So you might have like 3 or 4 inches of water flow in a creek during the thaw, which could be 2 or 3 feet deep of Rivendell, Tolkien, raging creek, horses, waves, chasing the black riders, that kind of thing. And you don't have that if it's frozen over and the thaw has not started. So even if you fell through, you may drop a couple feet of airspace onto the rocks of the bottom of the creek and look at your friends and go, holy crap, I just fell in and everything's cool. And you're laughing about it and you climb out. So it's not a big deal. But assessing whether that will happen or not is something that I actually have to show people. And I can describe it, creating a ladder or stairs down into the creek and then jumping up and down on the side of the creek to see if it's going to crack out. A lot of these techniques depend upon the snow conditions that you see present and whether or not there is already a hole, because sometimes the creeks, because of air current underneath the snowpack and above the water, will hollow out spaces in the snowpack above the creek, and you'll get these really cute, nice little round portholes that you can literally see down into the creek, and you go like, wow, it's dark down there, but maybe I see some water, but you can't really tell how deep the water is. So what that tells you is that the snow is obviously very thin right there. So you back up about 10, 15 feet and you start jumping up and down to see if anything can crack out, because you'd rather land on rock on the side of the creek than, kind of travel through that air void and land in the bottom of the creek. But even so, it's not a big deal. What happens oftentimes is that when you jump up and down kind of too much in the middle of the creek, the whole snow base that you're on will drop like an elevator a couple of feet, whatever the height of that airspace was between the water and the bottom of the snowpack. And you're standing on this thing going like, oh, wow, really? I just dropped 2 feet. Okay, let me get out of here. It's like standing on top of a sheet of plywood, that kind of a thing. And it just dropped a couple feet. So it's not, if I can maybe use this description as a way to relieve your worries, it's not that big a deal. You just got to test the support. So I think I ran a little long in that one, Carol, but those are the conditions. You do have ice layers in the snowpack. The snowpack is still about the height of a picnic table where I was, but that's only 8,400. So the higher you go, the more snow, but the ice layers will still be there because of, consolidation is everywhere, because of the radiation and weather and stuff. Overnight temps were about 32. Daytime temps were supposed to be about 50. Obviously warmer in the sun, but it was really nice. It was very nice out there, but this is February. So winter is not over. If you look at the videos from Goes West, the satellites up above the Pacific, there's still storms coming our way. What we have is usually a high pressure system that blocks them during February, sometimes March. But we call in the ski industry, in a way, we call it miracle March. We get when that high finally gets, kicked to the east, and then the storms can come straight into the Pacific coast. And that's when, if we have a lull during January and maybe February, that's when we get our big winter. So watch the storm tracks for March, and let's see how frequent, how low. A lot of times, if the high does remain, the storms will all go to the Pacific Northwest. If you're a southbounder, right now I think they've got a normal winter. But if you're a southbounder and the high pressure system continues to sit down here, everything's going to go into the Northwest, and you'll have a heavy winter. And I would question starting before August 1st if it is a heavy winter up there. So once again, the snow conditions will dictate what you can do on the snow. And with that, Carol, I'm going to throw it back to you and have some more coffee.
Perfect. Yeah. So we're going to focus on Q&A today. So I know, Ned, you kind of went over like river crossing type stuff, current conditions kind of in the south area of the PCT. So let's just open this up to questions. And this, it seems like similar questions are asked every time, which is good because repetition is good. And for the people who haven't been on before, that's great for them. And I know some people here have been on our meetings before. So let's just open this up to questions. And if you have a question, please, just so not everybody's talking at once, I'm going to allow everybody to unmute in a second. Please raise your hand, and then you'll come up to the top of the screen so I can see, and then we'll go one by one. And I see Amir already has a question, so perfect. If you don't have access to a camera and that sort of thing, go ahead and leave it in the chat and I will ask on your behalf. So you have multiple options to connect with Ned. So please raise your hand if you have a question. I'm going to allow everybody to unmute now. So let me just figure that out. There we go. So you guys should be able to unmute yourselves. And then, okay, it looks like Ethan has a question. Let's start with you. You should be able to unmute.
Morning, Ned. How you doing down there?
I don't know. Too early, buddy.
I hear you. It's early for me. I just came back from Point Reyes getting trained. Question for you, and I want to nuance the question by early season, late season, and differences. When you're walking through the Sierra and you're on snow, what are the signs that you should be avoiding a particular slope because of avalanche danger? What are the things to be looking for? What are the angles? And again, early versus late, because I know it's going to be different.
That's a good one. And actually that subject came up yesterday too. Because people they don't know how to read the snow. They don't know how to read their environment. They're not used to looking up and having to pay attention to these things. There are signs present in the forest, not so much above, but yeah, there's some above, that will tell you whether an area has been hit before. That will tell you a little bit about, maybe, oh crap, I don't want to be here. This area has been hit before and I don't know the conditions above me. Remember, there's avalanches can be triggered from a couple different points, largely, actually almost entirely due to overloading. Your own body weight, if the conditions are fragile in the snowpack, your own body weight can trigger one. So you've got to be able to know that the angle of the slope and the consistency of the snow. And I know I'm getting into probably a little too much, but back to consistency of the snow and the signs you will see. If you're on a consolidated pack, there's no worry. How do you know what a consolidated pack is? First of all, it's able to hold your weight, and you really don't have any punch through like I did yesterday. So if it's consolidated, there's been lots because you've done your research before you went out there. You asked the right questions and maybe the right people, or you went to the right website where you're at Kennedy Meadow South or something like that, and you find out that there's been like, 2-3 weeks of sunlight on the Sierra before you got there. It's all consolidated. It can consolidate it. A snowpack from a recent snowfall can consolidate during the spring when there's lots of sunlight in a couple of days. So if you get buried like my PCT friends did in 2014 or 16 at Ray Lakes with 2 feet of powder snow in June, they simply needed to wait a couple of days for it to consolidate, and then they could walk on top of it. They were in a hurry to get out, and they had to wallow all the way from Ray Lakes over Glen Pass, over Kearsarge Pass, and down to Onion Valley Trailhead. So that was a real nightmare. But if you wait a little bit, it will consolidate. So pay attention to the jet stream, pay attention to recent storm events ahead of you. If there's a lot of powder, the snowpack is unstable. If it's inclined over, say, 25 degrees, what 25 degrees look like. If it looks like a good sledding hill, maybe you might not want to be on it. If you suddenly come out of forest and there's no trees, and you look ahead of you and like 100 feet ahead of you, there's trees again. And you look up and there's no trees, and you look down, there's some trees, but a ways down, you're probably on the edge of an avalanche path, an old one. Another sign is that all the branches on the trees nearby are broken off on the uphill side of the tree. Another sign during the summer is all the trees are snapped over and pointing downhill and dead, of course. Let's see, what are some other signs? If you're going across a slope and you look up and see a cornice, all it takes is for that cornice to fall, largely due to overloading, again, say from rain or lots of sunlight melting the snow and getting it heavier and heavier and heavier. And then it suddenly releases, falls on the slope above you, then you're caught in an avalanche. In the springtime, there aren't the big freeway speed, air pluming, frothy avalanches that just go forever. You have what we call wet sloughs. And these things are maybe only about a foot tall, maybe two, and it's the whole mountainside will move at once, but very slowly because it's really wet and it doesn't go that fast, and it doesn't go that far. And the question came up yesterday is that if I'm caught in an avalanche, can I do something to improve my chances of survival? There's really nothing you can do. It's like being caught by a wave at the ocean. It's going to knock you over and throw you around. It's like, what is it? Body surfing. If you've ever body surfed, you're going to get chucked around. So there's not much you can do about it except for avoid it. So identify the slopes, what's probably avalanche prone, if it's steep enough. What conditions are unstable? God, I can't talk this morning. They're unstable. In other words, they're not consolidated. When you get up there, Ethan, you're probably going to be there after May. And if you're there between May and June, this is the ideal time because the surface is largely frozen and completely consolidated, and you can walk like on a sidewalk. But if you're there either side of that time frame, and that time frame is not fixed, it depends upon the kind of winter we've had. So this is all stuff you've got to have up in your head in knowing how to evaluate. My gosh, has it been a drought winter? If there's a drought winter, God, Carol, where's this stuff come from? If there's been a drought winter, the thaw will start earlier. It'll last a shorter period of time because there's less snow. If the winter preceding has been normal or heavy, it can start at the normal time, which is late May, early June. The thing with a normal or a heavy winter is that the thaw period, I hope I'm saying this right, the thaw period will last longer. So therefore, if it's a heavy winter like we've got right now, and with storms still forming out there, we probably will get more snow. The thaw time frame will last into mid-July. In other words, the creeks will be high, the passes will have steep snow. Yes, there'll be a compacted trail, but realize that in the act of compacting snow, you melt it with your pressure, your kinetic energy, your feet. So a trail gets icy. The more people walk on it, the icier it gets, as long as the air refreezes at night. So definitely micro spikes, and make sure that you're standing on a flat surface. If you're standing on an inclined surface with micro spikes, they stand a really good chance of rolling right off your feet. And then it's your shoe and the ability of it to hold the surface that keeps you from falling, right down the hill. So my soft-soled shoes, I'm not going to harp on trail runners like I usually do. I'm just going to say it that way. The soft-soled shoes can't get enough of a bite into whatever surface might be there because they oh God, what was the word I had yesterday? It was a great one too. They flatten out, and the snow fills all the little, ridges, and all you have is a ski now. Whereas if you had a more of a rigid boot, like a climbing boot or a traditional hiking boot with lug soles, yeah, the snow can fill the soles, but the rubber is harder, and you can lean that boot over and edge into whatever you can that's there the time you find yourself falling, to try and stop your fall. So anyway, I probably said way too much, but I hope you guys all got something out of that. Next.
That's terrific, Ned. Can I just follow up on that point about footwear you were bringing up? I'm a boot guy. I do not like trail runners. I'm probably the exception now. But if I'm wearing boots and I'm going through late season Sierra, which I'm hoping to do rather than May, I'm not looking forward to freezing on the snow. But we got to see what the year is like, because you and I have talked about this. I have a choice. I've got micro spikes and 10-point crampons. I'm thinking just to bring the crampons for safety. But in late season, would you be hauling crampons, or do you think micro spikes are sufficient for everything you're going to hit?
All right. Even if I'm going in July after a heavy winter, and I think, okay, yeah, it's a heavy winter. There's still lots of thaw going on. Definitely 10-point hiking crampons, not climbing crampons with the fangs. Get my hand right.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Sticking forward. The reason why is those fangs catch on your clothing, your legs, and you trip and fall. Climbers are trained how to walk, do their approach walk to their climb, aware that these fangs are there, and they walk a little different, a little more carefully. Hikers haven't had such training or even such education, and so they don't have the understanding. So oftentimes they get the fangs caught on their clothes, and they rip the clothes, and then down they go and suffer whatever consequences. So 10-point crampons will have forward facing fangs, but they're bent down. So anyway, that's the thing. So even if I go in August, and I know that there's a patch of snow on the northern aspect of the trail, of a mountain the trail goes across, and I'm thinking there's going to be patches of drifted snow across the trail that I'm going to have to climb up, walk across, slide down. Do I have what it takes? I always take my hiking crampons. I don't trust, after horsing around with micro spikes while they had us product testing them back in 2010, and they always rolled off no matter what we did, tie them on, whatever. They're not intended to be used on steep traverses. You have to have a flat surface to stand on. You can create a flat surface by kicking and scratching and with every footstep and making a nice place to stand. But be prepared to be going maybe a quarter mile an hour or whatever. Hiking on snow, you do about a mile an hour if the conditions are like secret season stuff where it's sidewalk. But it can get worse where you have to make these platforms to stand on. So I would say go with your hiking crampons like the K10s or the KTS. What was the next part of that?
No, that was pretty much it. I've had similar experience where micro spikes have just packed up with consolidated snow and become skis.
Hey, Ethan, one more thing. During the thaw, your trails will not be dry, especially.
I know.
Yeah,
that's another reason for boots.
Make sure the boots are waterproof on the outside. The waterproofing will wear off, so make sure you have a little tube and an old toothbrush, and weekly re-waterproof. And that's it's a way it keeps the water out. And then have some tall gaiters. They can be completely waterproof gaiters, polyurethane coated. As long as they can be pushed down, then your lower leg won't get so hot. Some of them have vents that you can open. Otherwise, you've got Gore-Tex type gaiters, which if they get dirty, it's like, duh, sometimes you're on dry trail. Fine particulate dirt gets in the pores, and then the Gore-Tex doesn't work. The dirt becomes a wick and allows the water to come right on in. Naturally, slowly. But anyway, so definitely bring your hiking crampons and your tall gaiters.
Sounds good. Thanks again.
Yeah.
Perfect. So there's a couple questions in the chat. Some of them are regarding river crossings and that sort of thing. So is it, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Dankmar?
Yeah.
Dankmar? Did you want to ask or do you want me to ask for you? I see it in the chat.
Well, I can see it too.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So
Yeah.
do we just want to?
Yeah. Let me just read them.
Okay, perfect.
Great. Not that I don't love hearing your lovely voice. But anyway, his starting date is March 16th. And what he's asking is, should I bring a rope to get across rivers? Capital letters, yelling, don't bring a rope. What happens? You got this poor soul crossing the creek, rivers, white water, nasty. You think you're going to hang on to him and pull him back to safety. And if he goes down, what happens is it's like when you're fishing and you've got a lead weight on the end of your line and you're bringing it in. Does that lead weight float on the surface? Hell no. It sinks in and it stays underwater until the line is vertical and you pull it out of the water. The same thing with using a rope on a river crossing. If we're talking about a tied to a person, so basically the person drowns while you pull them in. People say, okay, I'm gonna take my pack off on the side of the creek, and I'm gonna find my way across, and I'm gonna pull a rope across the creek and tie it off to a tree, and I'm gonna hang on to it as I go across for stability. It's like, well, first of all, the rope moves. So all it takes is a little bit of movement in your upper body and you're going to fall. So what happens next? You're hanging on to a rope and yet you're being battered and smashed by water, maybe covering your face and stuff. Depends how high you place the rope. No, ropes give you a false sense of security. Don't bring a rope. So, but good question. Dankmar. Let's see. I got one from Lisa. It's piggybacking off of that. Would it be better to cross solo, holding hands? There are a whole bunch of different ways of teaching creek crossings, and it depends upon the conditions, just like snow, the conditions found at the side of the creek when you get there. A lot of times you'll see schools like Knowles and other mountaineering, trekking, whatever's, and you see them doing these different techniques across really wide, flat, mountainous settings, like the base of a glacier. And they're in a train formation. Everybody's facing upstream, and they're hanging onto each other's backpacks, and they're walking sideways. And if you look at the creek bottom, and this is just one technique, and you look at the creek bottom, and there's just all the rocks are about the same size, and there's really nothing to trip on. And they're moving pretty good, and they were able to use this technique to put the weakest members toward the back, or in the middle rather, because you want to protect them. And that's great, but that's not what you get in the Sierra. In the Sierra's riverine settings are fairly steep, especially where the Pacific Crest Trail is, John Muir Trail is. Down lower, say around 9,000 feet, about 8,000 feet. During the thaw, these are flat out rivers. They're not creeks. They're huge. You're not going across that sucker unless you walk 5 miles upstream. For example, the creek crossing out of Ray Lakes in, oh Lord, I'm slipping on my memory. But the suspended bridge. Should that bridge get knocked out? I doubt it would ever, because it's fairly high above the creek. But say it's no longer there. And if you look around, if you pay attention to that setting when you get there, you will see the remains of an old stone bridge nearby that got wasted. I don't know, avalanche, I don't know, something took it out long time ago. But anyway, if something like that is no longer there, and you will find this if you're a southbounder, it's routine every winter in the Pacific Northwest that these wonderful bridges that they build during the summer up there, and they're beautiful to look at, but they get wasted by avalanches that are hauling ass down the creek during the winter, and they take out the bridge. So when you get there, there's no bridge, and you're looking at this, torrent, and you go, how the hell am I getting across that? And largely you've got to find a meadow to cross where it's flat, because when the water is flat, it spreads out, it's not as deep, and it's not as fast. I'm not worried so much about the push against my body by the fast water, but I'm thinking erosion causing big boulders as obstacles. So if you look at your creek, you just walked up to your creek, and God, I'm probably going way off, but if you see big boulders chucking the water up in the air and throwing it left and right and all that kind of stuff, you're not going to be walking sideways, dude. It ain't going to happen. First of all, you're not going to see your feet. You're not going to see the branches and the sticks and the boulders and all the other junk that's in the creek that you're going to step on that's going to try and cut your feet or puncture your feet. And if you're stepping sideways, you're moving across between all these rocks with the broadest part of your foot, trying to get your foot through them. Keep in mind, you can't pick up your feet. If you pick up your foot, it gets pushed downstream and instantly. You have to slide your feet in these conditions. So not only can you not see them, you can't pick them up. So it is far easier to get across something without getting stuck if you're using the pointy part of your toes moving forward. And you can wiggle your feet between these rocks to where you can find your next step that's stable because you're sliding. Let me just take a look at this question here. Trekking poles. Okay. Solo or not. If you go as a group, the next choice besides the train is sort of a circular thing. But inevitably, if you've got 3 or more people kind of circular, somebody's going sideways or backwards, and that's going to be terrifying for them. Oh, but I can hang on to everybody around me, and I can try and pick up my feet and step over backwards to get over this boulder. And it's a bit horrifying. There are easier ways, and I'm getting there. And I hope this is all helping you guys, because I don't know if you guys are bored. Okay, the next one from a circular collection of people would be just 2 people hanging onto each other's waists. It's a lot safer to hang onto a person's body than to hang on maybe their arm. What happens when you lose your balance? You immediately kind of like splay out, and you try and do anything you can to catch your balance. And so a lot of times when people are linking arms, that arm hold gets lost, or it suffers somehow, and so it's really not all that reliable. Should sort of the shit hit the fan and somebody's going down. So hang on to each other's waists, face the opposite side. Especially if you see big boulders, so that you can toe first through the rocks and make your way to a ramp or a place where you can easily get out of the creek. You don't want to find a cliff on the other side. You can see where you're going. First premise, I got to back up. Never think that you always have to cross the creek where the summer trail does. Take that as a takeaway expression. You want to cross the creek where it is safest and driest for you. Search the creek, a mile up, mile down, whatever. Look for logs, look for rock hops, where you can hop from rock to rock and hop from bush to bush, whatever. Dry crossing is best. Next would be, okay, crap, I got to get wet. Well, where's the best place for that? Wherever the creek is no longer steep, now where the creek is flat, find a meadow. You find a meadow by looking on your map, go up or down to that. And then, get into your skivvies or shorts or whatever. Make sure you've got foot protection, because your feet can get punctured and cut. That leads to infection, and that takes you off the trail. So have some sort of lightweight deck shoe, creek crossing shoe. Use your regular shoes. I cross in my hiking boots, leather, traditional. Pour the water out when I get across the other side, and put my dry socks on and hike a mile. Dry socks get wet. Exchange my socks to dry socks, and I'm golden for the rest of the day. So the last one would be crossing solo. If you are savvy enough with your balance, some of the key things are to assess, once again, the creek bottom, assess where you're going to get in and get out of that creek, what's downstream from you. If there are what we call strainers, which are things that you can get underneath and go underwater, and which will hold you underwater until you drown. I could tell you some stories about a famous ranger who lost his life that way. You want to evaluate whether or not there's a flatter place that's safer, and the current is moving less fast and it's lower, so there's less push. If you cross facing the other side, you have the narrow part of your body facing into the stream, rather than if you're facing upstream, and I know this seems contradictory to many, but it's based on the conditions that are there. If the stream is shallow, like that glacial run thing, a picture I portrayed earlier, there's not the water level on your body might be mid shin, not a hell of a lot of push against you. Should it be like mid thigh? Okay, a little more push against you. What do you have to do to maintain your balance when it's pushing you frontally? You have to put your poles out at say 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, extend your poles for the biggest tripod you can make. It's all about your center of gravity and maintaining it and controlling it. You do it by controlling where your head's going. So that's what your arms are doing with the extensions of your poles. Poles are an extension of your arm, whether you're on snow or in water. The longer, the better. It's all based on the conditions and the terrain. So that's what you would do in these kind of frontal crossings where you're going sideways. But guess what? You got water pushing on you. To counter it, you have to lean forward. You're leaning against an undulating current, impulsing against your body at an angle, which I hope you have hecka strong arms, or it's a narrow creek, because after a while, your arms are going to get wasted. This is part of the reality that they don't always portray in these cute little videos you see from, I don't know, whoever. Your arms are going to wear out. Your triceps, the back of your forearm here is it. That's doing all the work. You're leaning forward into this, into your poles as you're trying to sidestep and negotiate things, as your feet go numb, and as you're, just trying to make your way. So I really advocate, I like a frontal, go face across the creek, make sure the conditions are workable for you, have practiced this, realize that this is impulsive, undulating current. It's not just going to be steady on from upstream, because when the water flies over a boulder, it then comes at you at a different direction. So you're going to have stuff coming at you from 10 and 2, as well as straight on at 12 o'clock. So, or of course you're turned sideways. So it's, all from the side. So anyway, face the opposite side, extend your poles, create the broadest base of support, shuffle with your feet. There's a whole thing about waist belts on packs. There's a lot of preparation that goes into a creek crossing, making sure everything that's critical, electronics, etc., are in Ziploc waterproof bags should you crash and burn, so to speak, and get underwater, or it's really, even the worst creeks, unless you're down more on the 8,000 foot level, which would put you say 8 miles, maybe more, 10 miles from the headwaters of that creek. The more mileage upstream from you, the greater water volume will be present at your creek crossing. So therefore, better creek crossings are upstream than downstream. So God, where was I going? I'm starting to fade, guys. Yesterday I was out in the snow and I'm pretty tired, so I'm not thinking straight. But so broad basis of sport, you can only move one thing at a time, because remember, as soon as you pick up a pole, as soon as you pick up a foot, it's going to get pushed downstream. So you're moving one thing at a time. You're making very sure you have a good purchase grip on the ground at the bottom of the creek, as well as your poles are stabbed in before you put your complete weight on it. And you just go really slowly, moving one thing at a time of your 4 contacts with the ground. And that's how you work your way across the creek. Obviously, if somebody feels comfortable and you're in a group and somebody else wants to stand in the creek and catch you, or downstream should you lose it, and that usually doesn't work because you are now in momentum, and knock him over. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll form a chain of people going across the creek that are comfortable and can hold their position and can help you get by. A lot of times, if you've got a mix of a male and female in your party, really the danger, the more prone people to getting killed are those who are short and lightweight. Kids, obviously, dogs, obviously, short, lightweight people, and so those have been those who have died, say, in the Kings River crossing right between Pinchot and Mather in the past. That creek, mark this, write this down in your heads. the creek crossing of the Kings River between Pinchot and Mather, you do not have to cross it. Yeah, the line of the trail says go across it. But if you look upstream, it recrosses upstream. This river will kill you if you're there in the thaw. Don't cross it at all. Walk along the side of the creek all the way up to Mather Pass. It's all smooth. It's all glacial terrain. Yeah, you got bushes and you got logs and you got trees and you got benches to climb up and junk like that. It's just cross country. Everybody can do it, and that would be the safest way. So I probably belabored that, but if a husband and wife were doing this, the husband is going to want to protect his wife. The men should always protect the women. I would probably, if the lighter skilled, etc. person is feeling scared, do not cross there. There are better places. Find a meadow. Water level is lower. It's moving slower. The bottom is smoother. Yeah, you'll be in the water longer because it's wider, but you'll be safer. A lot of ERs there. Anyway, Carol,
yeah,
you take it.
I have something for you. So you were talking about hip belts. I'm not sure if you finished that thought. So hip belts.
I wondered where I derailed. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Understand this. It's like the 5 pounds on your, a pound on your feet is equal to 5 pounds on your back. That was an old Army study from God knows how long. And it was proven flawed somewhere in the past. If that's what you want to hang on to, and you really want extra lightweight feet, footwear, God, that's great. Do your thing. I'm not here to tell you that my way or the highway. That's not true. I'm just trying to shed light on stuff. So the thing about the hip belt had to do with, if you do, eat it in the creek, you want to get away from your pack so it doesn't pin you down. One of the fallacies is that unless it's a really nice little Bambi kind of creek and everything is birds and butterflies, you have whitewater going all over. So if you get knocked down, you're going to get thrown around. You're not going to really be able to stay with your pack anyway. You're going to lose your pack in the creek. So then you're just fighting for your life, which really all it takes is getting on your feet, because the depth of the creek is only about mid-thigh, unless it's kind of like hip high. Most of the creek crossings of the really bad creeks, you hear stories of chest deep, and I made it. I don't know anything that was ever chest deep that was actually moving. If it was not moving, yeah, sure, you could probably get through it. But if it's moving, you're moving. So it ain't going to happen. But periodic splashes could be chest deep and might knock you over. So you got to be good on your pole placement and stuff like that. But that really doesn't happen. It's either really steep in whitewater, or it's really flat in a meadow and really Bambi. So the deal about the waist belt had to do with getting away from your pack so that you can come up to the surface. Supposedly you're way under the surface, because you're really not. But the mistake is that in your doing the dance, going across the creek and trying to make sure each foot is in the right place and each pole is in the right place, your upper body literally does a little bit of back and forth. And especially if you put your foot somewhere in a hurry because you picked up your foot, it got pushed over to the side, and now you suddenly have to put it somewhere that, oh shit, it's on top of a rock and not between two rocks. Your upper body gets thrown off. You don't have your balance. If your pack starts moving, and your pack is like having the monkey on your back. You've got to be able to control where it goes. If your body starts going, your pack will start going, but then you've got to catch your pack once you regain your balance. Your pack may say, hell no, I'm going to keep going. So you suddenly have this, a fight in a split second fight on your hands. What works better, just to finalize this thing, if you can control where your pack goes by attaching your waist belt. I mean, think of this. I mean, your waist belt is undone. If you do a little bit of this with your belt off, have you ever felt where your pack it goes? Get a feel for that. And if you're comfortable with that kind of monkeying on your back, moving side to side, then cross the creek. You know, some people are fine with that. But I have a big pack. I carry gear for a group usually when I teach my classes. So I'm top heavy. For me, I have to have my waist belt on so I can control where the top of that pack goes. If the bottom of the pack isn't anchored to me, the top of the pack is going to pitch side to side, and that's going to drag me into the water. So pros and cons, you decide, but just be aware that that's what's going on with, do I hip belt or do I not?
Ned, can I jump in with 2 follow-ups on exactly the stuff you're talking about? First, a reminder, you talk about a lot of stuff. You neglected to mention time of day for crossing and how mornings are generally better. But you mentioned holding on to a waist instead of linking arms. How do you do that? I mean, that seems like unless the guy's wearing a belt, it seems like a pretty easy point of failure.
The expression comes from back when we had Trapper Nelson framed packs, which sat high on our backs. People could reach around and grab each other's waist belt of their pants and hang on to that. And so that's the way that was done. If you have a traditional pack nowadays, unless that waist belt is off, you can't really grab the opposite hip. 2 people side by side, you got to reach across their back and their hip to grab their waist belt of their pants, if they even have one. So you're really hanging on to clothing, and that doesn't really work all that great in a crisis anyway. So what have you got? You don't have anything but to grab onto their pack frame or something like that. So then you don't have the laced arms, which is the way it used to be done. So you have to kind of link arms, but just be aware, and that's the only reason why I mentioned it, Ethan, is that you got to be aware that should the other person lose their balance, they're probably first reaction going to let go, and then you've got to grab them. Or better yet, practice this stuff before you go in the water. So I know there was a lot of stuff I didn't include in that last oration, but all of my people, before we go on the water, we practice walking over the obstacles on the side of the creek bed, all the rocks and junk there, the roots and stuff like that. Practice what it's like to be more splayed out on your poles. Practice what it's like if you're going to do side by side. How to hang on to each other. Maybe before you go into the water, somebody leans suddenly the other way. Can you get caught? Can you become caught by the other person and pulled back into balance? You got to practice this stuff, because the first time it's Greek and you don't know. Largely the force behind all of this creek crossing stuff is the force of moving water. And the only way I can try and describe that is, have you ever stood in the surf, say thigh deep water, maybe knee deep water, and been hit by a wave? Water has weight. When that weight is moving at you, it's going to knock you over, and there's a lot of force to it. Even if it isn't a wave, even if it's just a current, that's what I'm referring to as this push. There's a lot of weight and push to moving water. But good point, Ethan. It has to do with time of day, the depth of the creek. So you'll have a shallower creek in the morning because it was cold up in the headwaters. Maybe it was cold where you are too, but therefore there'll be less flow coming down the creek. The creek may drop a foot. It may drop 6 inches overnight. So if you can cross a nasty creek in the morning, it'll be easier. If it's that cold, realize that the splash of the creek on rocks and logs and stuff may be ice. So don't go stepping on a wet log, say to do a dry crossing, on a sub-freezing morning without wearing your crampons, because it's going to be ice. Certainly test it before you put your weight on it. Is this a wet log slippery? You can wear your crampons. You can, I wouldn't wear micro spikes, because remember, the top of the log is crowned. So the micro spikes might roll right off your feet, and then you're falling 4 or 5 feet into the creek. So hiking crampons are the way to go if you want if you want to do a crossing like that, and the wetness is icy. Even the same thing with a rock, a big boulder, a wet boulder that was made wet by the afternoon heavy runoff, freezes overnight, water level drops, and you think, hey, look at this, I can do a rock hop. I don't even have to get in the water. So you keep your shoes on, you put your crampons on, you step on that first wet rock, and it's ice. So,
or moss.
well, you got to be pretty low for that. You know, we're talking about creeks that annually, you know, are a torrent. So the moss really doesn't get going unless you've got several years of drought where that creek volume doesn't really rise up. It doesn't, you know, so the moss is allowed to start to accumulate, or fungi or some sort of growth on the rock. But anyway, did I answer it, Ethan?
Oh yeah. No, I don't even walk logs anymore. I crawl them. I just get my center of gravity low. I don't care what I look like. I don't want to fall. No, thanks, Ned.
Yeah, let's move on. Thanks. Good one, Ethan.
Hey, Ned,
Yeah.
let's go back to Amir had a question that we skipped over. How much fuel is needed to melt snow for about 1 liter of water?
Amir, you're great. You're trying to tie me down on that one. When you have to melt snow, how much fuel is going to be needed? Twice as much as you might normally bring. Okay, let's just say that straight off the top. When I go in and I know that the lakes are all frozen, the creeks are all frozen, it's like March. Where I'm going, I know is not avalanche prone. It's safe for everybody. We're not going to have access to creeks. There's like, 20 feet of snow. We're not digging in anywhere. So we know we're melting snow. I'll bring 2 fuel canisters of a winterized fuel. And then you start melting your water by a spoonful. If you take your pot and you scoop up a bunch of snow, remember, don't take the surface snow. Surface snow has all the debris and the bugs and the junk flying around in the air. So scrape off the top couple inches and get the powder snow underneath, or the cleaner snow underneath. And if you take that full pot and you stick it on, your roaring stove, you're just going to burn the bottom of your pot. And people go like, what the hell are you talking about? The snow will melt inside the pot, but it will only melt the bottom snow. Then that turns to water, that boils, that gets absorbed by the snow up above. The snow up above, like up on the rim, it may even be, really stuck tight or frozen to the rim. It doesn't descend like you think. Oh, it's just going to gradually, the snow is going to go down to the bottom and the water is going to backfill and it's going to turn into a boil and it's great. Start with a spoonful. When the spoonful melts, put it 2 spoonfuls and then 4 spoonfuls and do that. You've always got to have some water in the bottom to start. Some people just take some water out of their bladder or canteen or whatever, water bottle, and pour a little in and then start adding, a cup of snow. But you got to have some water to begin with. But the rule of thumb, I would double your fuel. That takes us back to another great expression that you guys need to remember. When you go into the Sierra, when you go into where you're snow hiking and no longer walking on dry trail where there's lots of traction, you're going to need to cut your mileage in half, and you're going to need to double your food. You get voraciously hungry. I mean, if you haven't had hiker hunger yet, the ranger in LeConte Canyon at the base of Bishop Pass told me during an interview once upon a time, and he's been in there like 30 years. I mean, he's a seasoned guy. He says these PCT through hikers go flying by his station mid-June, and he talks to them and they have a nice conversation, and he finds out that they're totally out of food. They had no idea that they would be so hungry out there. They have days to go to get to VVR because it's nothing but snow around. And they're just, panicking, thinking they got to make these monster miles to get there sooner because they don't have any food. So double your food, because if you don't have food, you can't think straight. You don't have the strength to run your muscles and stay balanced. Walking on snow is like walking on that ice arena that people are skating on. Your feet want to go everywhere. So now suddenly when you have a loss of traction at your feet, you have to compensate by tightening up all your adductors in your legs, the muscles that bring your legs together, and all your supporting muscles in your pelvis, not to mention your arms and your poles and your mind trying to maintain your balance. A lot more muscles are used, so therefore you're going to be consuming a great deal of food and also sweating a hell of a lot more. And you're going to go through a lot of electrolytes. So you want to replenish your electrolytes more so while snow hiking than by summer hiking, because you just end up having cramping attacks and other mentation issues, thought issues that will come up, and then you're going to get in trouble. So double your food and cut your miles in half. And did I kill that one? Amir? Is Amir on? Hey, where's your voice, dude?
I'm not sure if he has access to his mic. He says yes. Perfect. And Amir, you actually had another question too. So let's just do that. And I think we're good with the questions in the chat after this one, and then we can go to raising hands again or whatever, or just unmuting.
Cool.
Some hikers rope themselves together for snow travel. Does this make any sense for safety?
Okay, this would be a climbing technique. This is something taught in the climbing venues. If you go to a mountaineering climbing school, the reason is climbers are on much steeper slopes than a snow hiker. Snow climbing and snow hiking are different. And yeah, Carol, I got to write something about this. But because they move on such steep surfaces that are highly unpredictable as far as traction and stability and balance, and all it takes is a gust of wind or flying ice to knock them off balance, everybody has to be anchored. You anchor yourself in this sort of moving train, so to speak, by everybody takes their uphill hand in the ice axe that's in their uphill hand, and you fully plunge it into the snow to where the head of the ice axe is right at snow level. Now, when you're on a steep slope, that is comfortably at about shoulder level. So you're not bending over like a snow hiker on a less steep slope would have to bend over if he were to sink his ice axe all the way into the snow next to his body. Bending over while walking is hazardous to begin with. You can't maintain your balance as well. Your center of balance is ahead of your body if you're bent over, and you got a monkey on your back. So really, for through hikers to try and stay anchored all the time, to where if somebody in your roped together chain of people to eat it and slip and start to fall, and need to rely upon that rope connected to someone who is anchored to prevent them from tumbling down the hill, it doesn't really work for snow hikers. They're just the circumstances of snow type and snow slope angle and training. They're not trained for climbing. So do not rope yourselves together unless anchored. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, Amir, did that answer? I know you're saying, let's see, PC to High Sierra passes are mountaineering. I mean, Ned, that's an interesting statement. Like, I'm trying to think back to when I hiked it in a high snow year. That's like Forester Pass, maybe, Mather Pass, maybe, but otherwise, I don't see a place where you would want to maybe use a rope ever on the PCT, right?
When I take a slope inclinometer, slope meter out there, and I use a slope meter for avalanche rescue stuff. You need to know what the angle of the slope is to assess its stability. When I've taken a slope meter out early season over Forester, over some of these passes, and assess it, most of the inclines that you're going to go over or have to deal with, like, for example, and you guys don't, you don't probably know how to identify with what I'm talking about, but the base of Forester is more of a ramp. Yeah, it's inclined, but it's only about 15 to 20 degrees. Does that look like a good sledding hill? Oh, hell yeah, that looks like a great sledding hill. But yet you're only about halfway up Forester when it becomes more like a wall. Now, is it really a wall? Because it looked like way back there, it looked like a frickin' straight up wall. And everybody looks at it from down at Tyndall Creek Crossing and go, or even from Bighorn Plateau, and they go like, I'm not frickin' going over that, and they turn around. It's really not that bad. There are certain techniques to use as a snow hiker to maximize your grip on the hill when it becomes more like 25, 30 degrees. It doesn't get to 45 degrees until you hit the ice chute. And you're going like, oh, hell, that's an ice chute. And it's the steepest place. What the heck am I going to do? Classically, most of the through hikers are not there. When I was there, I was always in there early season to cut a trail through the ice to go from one side of the chute to the other and give everybody a flat trail, on snow and in ice to walk on. But you will find that there'll be a boot track going across. And as long as you're stepping in the flat platforms created by other people's feet, and you have really good balance, i.e., 2 poles, an ice axe is not a pole. People use ice axes. They're short, little dinky ice axe, and they let the tip of the ice axe, that is at the tip at the end of the shaft, they use that as a little scratch, and it's just sort of tapping along the snow surface. But if shit hits the fan and you need to rely upon that, it can't be used to catch your balance. If you put your weight on your ice axe and you suddenly push it into the snow, it's a point. It's going to sink into the snow. So what's going to happen to you? Your head is going to go down. You're going to lose your balance. You're going to crash and burn, and you're going to go on down the hillside. It's best, and I say this from the point of view that through hikers are not climber trained. They haven't studied in a classroom setting the anatomy and physiology, so to speak, of the mountain setting. So they don't know what they're looking at and then say, okay, that's risky up ahead. Okay, time to stop, take off the pack, get the hiking crampons out. Time to put the self-arrest pole, the downhill hand. Now, we're getting into serious terrain. I need to maximize my head control. Head control is balance control with 2 poles. I don't want to be bent over. I want to stay upright. I want to keep 100% of my weight on my feet to improve my traction and move cautiously. So you really don't get into such steep terrain, even on Mather. Some sections of Pinchot up by the top are fairly steep. Muir, no. The east side of Bishop, some of the eastern aspects of the trails that you take to go out for resupply, those can be really bad. Shepherd Pass, forget it. Trail Crest, no way. People die up on Trail Crest trying to get up Whitney. It's like, are you kidding me? Don't. But on the PCT, a lot of those are just ramp approaches. Yes, wherever you see switchbacks present on your map for summer trail, that implies super steep. It doesn't mean you can't make your own switchbacks. The trail is buried. You're not going to see the trail. So cut frequent switchbacks. Make it easy on yourself. You don't have to follow the trail. Find a route that is safer for you based on the terrain, the snow terrain you see, which is like follow a ridge to get to the top of the mountain, follow a valley to get up the canyon. You don't have to be up on the sidewall of the canyon where the summer trail is, like in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of those trails are up on the canyon walls in trees. It's really steep, where if it's snow covered, you're going to crash into a tree and be flown out, hopefully. But I don't think you need to worry about it, Amir. I've been out there with other people that were climber trained, and they had their super heavy duty boots, which are killer for traction and edging and all that. And they had the 12-point climbing crampons, and they had the ropes and all that stuff. They had fluke anchors. They had all, and where they never used them. The terrain is not a climber's thing. It's all like in the climbing world, that would be considered the approach trail. Even the Forester isn't a climbing wall. So it's snow hiking. Just be a little wiser. People, thousands of people go over this thing, even when it's got snow on it. Once there's a boot track, it's a lot safer. I still don't like micro spikes, even for a boot track. But for those who simply feel like they can't tolerate a few more grams of hiking crampon versus micro spikes, give it a go, but stay on flat surfaces if you are bringing micro spikes. Does that do it?
I think so. And I think we need to clarify something, because I think people are a little bit confused about the ice axe comment you made. So
Good.
You recommend bringing an ice axe. correct? Like you're not recommending not to bring an ice axe.
Oh, crap. Okay, wait a minute. Oh, where is it? I'd
For
have to go.
self-arrest and that sort of thing. There's some self-arrest questions. Should I bring an ice axe questions? A little bit of confusion. So
Okay.
what is your stance on ice axes, I guess, to summarize? And then, is that the best thing to use for self-arrest if you take a tumble?
Okay. An ice axe is the definitive climbing tool for the type of situations that you run into while climbing, where you have to chip a hold in ice. You have to use the broad adze part of the ice axe to chop platforms to stand on, where you use the entire length of the shaft sunk in the snow to create an anchor so that you can belay someone over a cliff. The tool is a wonderful tool in the climbing setting. Yes, it can be used in netting settings. Matter of fact, if you could look back over history, people in the 1800s in their dresses and their top hats were out on glaciers with these 4-foot long ice axes, and yeah, they would use them. And they also had baskets. They had attachable snow baskets they could put on these 4-foot long ice axes and use them as poles. Why would they do that? Because they had to maintain their balance with 2 poles. They'd have a regular pole in the downhill hand and the long ice axe in the uphill hand with a basket on it. Okay, now I think I digressed. And Carol, you got to keep me on point here. Bringing
So people were confused about, are you not recommending bringing an ice axe? Should we maybe get into the whippet side of things?
Okay, flag on the field. Stop. Timeout. I cheated. I do have John Silva's question here, so I cheated a little bit. I opened my mouth before looking. Through hikers and snow hikers are typically not trained to identify what risk looks like up ahead. They don't know. When something is a certain steepness, or when they're on a northern aspect of a hill versus a southern aspect of a hill, which might be icier and more unstable, to require stopping, unstrapping the ice axe, throwing your pack back on, getting comfy again, and walking now with 1 pole and an ice axe that's dangling off the other hand. It's a new thing. They're not trained to identify that risk. Plus, they don't want to stop. They want to keep going with their group. They don't want to look like a weak member. They don't want to imply that by their thinking that things are unsafe and they have to become more safe with the use of a tool, they may be ridiculed. There is a tremendous amount of social pressure out there, and this is just one subject. So if you don't know when to use the ice axe, i.e. you don't know when to take it off of your pack, you're probably not going to take it off your pack at all. And if nobody else around you is using their ice axes because they don't know what they're doing either, then you're not going to use it at all. So that's why when I'm out there at the base of Forester teaching people and stuff like that, people in my class, I see through hikers falling down the hill, tumbling and rolling with their ice axes strapped to their packs. Okay, so I try and teach people to prevent falls by using 2 poles. That's what they do. You prevent the fall. A fall is triggered either by your head going downhill. You lose balance with your upper body, can be caused by a bunch of stuff, or you lose traction and your lower body slips out. So that's how the fall is created. So if you can control that by using 2 poles you're really familiar with, snow baskets, you feel comfortable out there, great balance, good traction, hiking crampons, whatever, you can prevent your fall. You're not on that steep a terrain. It's the impact with the boulders. It's the impact with the trees. It's the flying off the cliff. It's landing in the creek. It's landing in the lake. That's what's going to kill you. So if you fall and tumble, you got to be able to self-arrest before you get to an object that might break something in you. Therefore, you have to have a self-arrest device in your hand all the time. You never know when you're going to go down. So common sense, everybody will say, that's the tool of choice, ice axe. But you got to know when to deploy it. You got to know when to and be willing to stop and take it off your pack. That's what we belabored that. So with a self-arrest pole, something like the Black Diamond Whippet, there are other manufacturers. I can't think of Gravel might make one still. If you've got a self-arrest tool in your hand all the time, and you see that slope and it looks like a nice sledding hill, because that's what you remembered. You know, if somebody said, if it looks like a sledding hill, I should be a little more cautious. If I slip, I'm going to go, a little further down that hill than I like. So I want to have a tool, the right tool in my hand. The self-arrest pole has a blade on the top of it that you can assume the position of a self-arrest technique and roll on top of your pole, dig that pick into the snow and come to a stop with your toes and everything. So I would advocate, this is not me saying this is what you have to do. This is saying this sucker's in your hand all the time. If you want to stop a tumble and a fall and a crash and burn into some object, you got to be able to arrest immediately. You cannot go, oh, what did they say in the video? Shit, I forgot. As soon as you hit the deck in a fall on a slippery surface that's inclined, you're gone. You're gonna just yard sail all the way, tumble down, and you accelerate. So you have to immediately go, assume the position. I was just teaching this yesterday, so it's just coming out of me again. You have to assume the self-arrest position, and you have to roll your body in the direction of the shoulder that has the pick. If it's in your left hand, in this case, you go that way. If it's in your right hand, then you're going to go that way. So roll to the pick. Because if you're going across a slope a certain way, downhill is on the left-hand side, your self-arrest pole is in your left hand. But if you're going across the slope the other way, your self-arrest pole is going to be in your right hand. So there will be times where you're going to be self-arresting with the pick and you're at your left shoulder, and other times when the pick is going to be at your right shoulder. So you have to practice both before you get onto these inclines. And you'll find, as a PCT through hiker, that one of the first places is on the backside of the walls around Chicken Spring Lake at Cottonwood Pass. Up to Cottonwood Pass from Kennedy Meadows south, there really aren't that many steep slopes, so you're really not going to be needing to think about self-arrest. And a lot of times the snow is going to be fairly soft because you're at a lower elevation. So when you get up higher, when the air temperatures at night are colder, when you have the more of an ice surface in the morning because of that, you have to think about stopping those falls with a quick self-arrest. And you should practice on the slopes around Chicken Spring Lake before you proceed on toward Forester. But remember, you see, this is one thing leads to another. Even your descents into creeks, like first one is Rock Creek. Right as soon as you get into Sequoia National Park, you got to drop down into Rock Creek. Those descents and ascents out of these creeks, these big creeks like Whitney Creek going into Crabtree, some of the aspects of going into Tyndall from the Bighorn Plateau, they're steep. And if you've got your trail runners or soft-soled shoes, you're not going to get a grip. And micro spikes aren't going to help unless you're stepping in somebody else's footprints or you're on a boot track. But if you've got your hiking crampons and you got a hard-soled shoe, you can walk anywhere you want. And you can say, why do I have to follow this boot track that everybody else has been following? Because they see that it's on the trail on top of 12 feet of snow, and they're trying to negotiate summertime switchbacks, super steep there. Yeah, there's a boot track there. I could follow that. But look, there's a creek. I could follow this creek. It's a nice, gentle little ramp going down this meadowy thing, and it'll get me to the bottom. Yeah, it's not on the trail, but it ends up at the same place, bottom of Rock Creek. Oh, let me go that way. I don't even need hiking crampons. I'm just going to, heel plunge. It's another technique for going downhill. And so you choose your routes. Route selection is really important to understand because it can give you a safer journey. You choose routes based on the terrain of the snow, not the land. Wind blows snow all over the place and forms different ramps and pitches that are easier to walk on than trying to follow the stupid summer trail. The summer trail was designed for pack animals. You're out there on snow. So there are easier ways to go where you don't have to fear really steep stuff. I probably killed that one. Where are we, Carol?
Thanks, Ned. I'm going to have to sign off soon. I have to jump on another call, but I'm going to make you a host. So let me just do that really quick before There's another question, a really good question in the chat, actually. So I'm going to make you a host. All right.
Has everybody got their mics on? Can everybody just speak?
Everybody should be able to unmute, right? Yes. And Ned, you can actually, now you can change all of those parameters since you're the host. So thank you guys. I'm going to sign off. But let's see, Lisa, I'll just kick this off first. Lisa has a question about whip it in uphill hand or downhill hand. So I'm going to leave you guys with that.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next time. We
All right.
good, Ned?
Yeah, we're
Thumbs
good.
up?
Thanks,
Okay.
Carol. This has
Okay,
been wonderful. Thank you so much
bye.
for hosting this.
Of course. Bye, guys.
Okay, whippets go in your downhill hand. An ice axe is an anchor for the climber. It goes in the uphill hand. So just remember that when you do a switchback on snow, you have to change the whippet from your downhill hand formerly. Now you're facing across the slope going the other way. You have to change your whippet to the downhill hand. Does it really technically matter after you hit the deck and now you're tumbling? No, it doesn't really matter. But the problem comes, I don't know. You know what? Sometimes when I'm not thinking and I'm talking and teaching and stuff, I'll have my whippet in the uphill hand, and it's not, like frozen rule. You can have the whippet in the uphill hand, because once you start tumbling, once you fall, you're going to assume the position as best you can, as fast you can. And if it happens to be in your uphill hand, you're going to go to the position there, and you're going to roll that way to the pick. But for the most part, keep it in your downhill hand as a rule of thumb. I find that I use it to sit on. The nice thing about the top of a whippet is it's fairly flat. And if you want to take a break at on a slope or at a switchback that you just created, you can literally just tuck it under your pelvic bone, your femoral head, top of your leg, and you can sit on it and rest. And it's really kind of convenient if it's in your downhill hand. What's the next one? You guys speak up too. I'd rather hear your voices and talk to you directly. Oh, I've got you muted. All right. Learning thing here. I got to figure out how to open you guys all up. So I've never done this, and you guys, somebody would have to type in how I do this in Zoom. I don't know how to.
I think it's okay. I can.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Okay, then you have to individually. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a quick question. I feel like we hear so much about the Sierras, especially with like the PCT and like preparation, and sort of like, I don't know, you can kind of get overwhelmed by the amount of not negativity, but just sort of like the scariness surrounding like a high snow year and stuff like that. I don't know. I was just curious about like what sort of like the rewards are from going into the Sierra, like, because it looks really beautiful, like when there's a lot of snow and stuff. And I'm sure there are people that go when there's a lot of snow on the ground. I've actually seen like a video of somebody up there in April, and there's just snow blanketing the mountains, and it looks beautiful. So I don't know, maybe just talk about that.
Time out. Lovely question, but too many questions in there, and I'll get confused as to what to hit. So okay, I'll start with one, and if I forget the other ones, remind me. So one at a time. I was really wasted from yesterday. So anyway, the benefits of going in while there's still snow as a PCT through hiker. One of the first things, if we talk about pros and cons, and I've done a great deal of these podcast Zooms, whatever things with Carol, and we go on for hours on the pros and cons of a March start and a May entry into the Sierra versus a June entry into the Sierra versus a July. So anyway, we've talked a lot about it, but in essence, yeah, not only is it beautiful with a blanket of snow, and secondly, that it doesn't make any damn bit of difference how thick it is. You walk on top as long as it's frozen. The problem comes when it starts thawing out, and you're no longer able to walk on top, and it's a freaking nightmare. And you have to walk it like on top of the snow when it's frozen finally at about 3 or 4 in the morning, and then it thaws out at like 10 in the morning, and you start post holing, and so your hiking time is only between 3, 4 in the morning and 9 or 10 in the morning, and then you just got to call it quits because it's ridiculous. you're literally waist deep and floundering and trying to get out of a hole, and people have to pull you out, and then they fall in too, and it's a mess. Or you have to jettison your pack and wiggle away. And so it's based on the thaw. I can't say when the thaw is going to start. It depends upon the winter preceding. So if it's a normal winter, thaw usually starts about the end of May. So get in there early enough that the storms are becoming less and less frequent. After Easter, the storms arrive less frequently and dump less snow per storm. Therefore, less of an avalanche risk after the storm. Avalanche risk will diminish with a couple of days of consolidation. So it's not an ever-present thing. You just got to wait it out. If you get dumped on by a foot or more of snow on a pitch of existing snow greater than 25 degrees or so, and once again, it looks like a sledding hill, then it could slide. The new snow can slide on the old surface. It doesn't bond well. So if you go in after, say, May 1st, and you go as far as you can, walking a mile an hour on snow, got to maintain your balance and stability and not slip and stuff. You can get through the Sierra up to Sonora Pass. You got to get past all the deep creeks, because once the thaw starts, you got to cross those creeks. If there's still nothing, everything's frozen, there's no water contribution, melted water being added by all the tributaries of these. Like I think of the one of the big creeks north of Tuolumne Meadows, Matterhorn Canyon. Wherever you see a trail crossing a creek, and I know I'm going on, but this is all really good stuff. Wherever the summer trail crosses a creek, and you look at the map and you see miles of creek above you and tributary after tributary coming in from the side on your map, you know that all of that acreage is melting. All of that snow up there, cubic feet galore, contributing to that creek crossing there. That's like a Kings River crossing. That's going to be a killer crossing. You're going to have to walk way upstream to find a safe place, a safe meadow, safe whatever, or a log or something. Though you do not want to try and endeavor to cross those creeks after the thaw. And if it's been a heavy winter, there's going to be a lot of snow, 10, 20 feet, whatever. And that's going to take a long time to melt out. Therefore, the thaw takes a long time. It may not completely dry. The trail may not be snow free till end of September. So it's like, you go, okay, I want to avoid snow. Yeah, it's pretty, but it's drag. So I'm going to wait at Kennedy Meadows. Forget it. You're just going to wait forever unless it's after a drought winter. Now, Ray Jardine's whatever book, I can't remember. I've never read it, the name of it. But, his thing was mid-June. Yeah, go in mid-June. But maybe he did say this would be the ideal time after a drought winter because you'll have less snow. And it'll only be on the passes where it's really steep. So just be prepared for that. But otherwise, you're going to have more miles of dry trail. Therefore, you can go faster and haul ass because you've waited too long to go through the Sierra. Now you have less time till about the middle of September to cover all that mileage to get to Canada. Now you got to hike faster and hike every day to get there because there is a bookend to this hike, a conditional environmental condition bookend of fresh fall new snow powdered snow coming in anytime after the middle of September. Powder snow will cause tremendous exertional problems. You're wallowing. Snowshoes don't help because it's powder. You're just sinking. You're post-holing with snowshoes on. And don't forget, the terrain in the Pacific Northwest is really steep. So you really don't want to be on any kind of deep snow in the Pacific Northwest. You can be on shallow snow, and hopefully there's a boot track through it. But there is a bookend. So if you wait too long to go through the Sierra, you're going to have to be like a Ray Jardine. You're going to have to hike fast and light and, be the Legolas of the Tolkien's trilogy. You just dance on the top of the snow and fly along and go quick. Not everybody has wings on their feet. So I don't know. What was the other question? That was one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of rambled, but I feel like, just talking about like the benefits, because I think I hear so much about like starting after May or get to the Sierras after May. And I was like, well, isn't it possible to be up there before then? And like in the snow, it looks beautiful. So I just wanted you to speak on that. So I think you were great.
Okay, you just injected a whole nother bookend of this thing. You said before May. Well, hell, I'm starting. I got my permit to start March 1st. I'm starting March 1st from the Mexican border. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to get to Kennedy Meadows South. Oh my God. So that puts me mid-April. And May 1st is like don't enter until May 1st. So now I'm 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Well, what does that really mean? All that means is that is a greater likelihood of avalanche risk. Storm comes in, dumps a foot or more of fresh snow on a freeze-thaw surface. In other words, remember, every time you've got a period of sunshine between storms, the surface melts, refreezes at night. It becomes icy, crusty, whatever. New snow doesn't bond well with it. So everything around the trail, say you're out Chicken Spring Lake, you've gone up from Kennedy Meadows, you've entered mid-April. Snowstorm comes in, dumps a couple feet of snow. We get heavy snowfalls out here more toward the body of winter than the end of winter, but the Sierra has seen snowfall every month of the year. During the summer, probably more in the inches and the dustings, but they happen. Then say April, you might get 1, 2, 3 feet. And not the 5-foot storms that we get during the winter, especially this winter. So you go in mid-April. What's the risk? Is that you have to sit around in your tent for a couple of days for the snowpack to consolidate, the new stuff to freeze up so that you can walk again on it. Don't even think about trying to do the snowshoe thing. If I were to try and enter, and I did. I pulled a sled from Tuolumne Meadows down to Cottonwood Pass in March and April one year in 82 or 4, can't remember, it was right in there. A normal winter. But if you go early, all the creeks are frozen, all the lakes are frozen. I just skied right across, pulled my 7-foot sled that weighed 80 pounds, and we just floated along on the surface, and it was all grand. It was a big white sidewalk. The risk was, if a storm comes in and you're not camped or you're not in the right place, yeah, you could be in an avalanche path. So you need to know where those are, how to assess those. If you know that, you've taken your Avalanche 1 class from American Avalanche Association or something, you got a pretty good idea about snow dynamics, you can assess where avalanches have been and may happen again. And you can know how to evaluate stuff. So there's wonderful benefits, and there are some increased risks if you're there under the wrong conditions. Notice I say it's not time dependent, it's condition dependent. You have to make that call as you approach the Sierra. And don't rule out Southern California from Paradise Valley north, coming up on San Jacinto, where I was yesterday. It's notorious for being risky, full of risky northern faced, shady slopes, steep pitches with old snow that has freeze thawed and ice become ice. Fuller Ridge is notorious also, leaving Saddle Junction on San Jacinto, and then you're coming up to where you drop down onto I-10. That whole Fuller Ridge thing can be very risky, as well as some slopes in the San Bernardinos and San Gabriel's around Baldy and, right out of Wrightwood. So do you want to bring a self-arrest pole from the get-go? You're going to be, once again, socially criticized, but will you be prepared on the Desert Divide? Yeah. Will there be people trying to follow in your tracks because you're breaking trail? Yeah. But so you're leading the band, if I were to do it again, I would probably carry everything from the get-go, because I don't know when I'm going to arrive at Paradise Valley Cafe, where I can then hitchhike to Idlewild, receive a package in the mail or have it mailed to somebody or other. I don't know how it works. I don't know those sort of logistics nowadays, and get my snow tools to proceed safely. So I would probably start out with my snow gear if I knew that it had been a heavy winter in Southern California. I know I'm going on, but right now, if you guys pay attention to the storm track, recently all those atmospheric rivers that we got tracked south. Southern California got hit. We had flood warnings and alerts in the LA area, all that kind of junk, meaning lots of snow in the mountains. There are ski areas down here, believe it or not, sunny Southern California, where it never rains and it's like high desert. And no, if you look at the map, If you see ski areas, that means there can be snow and it is steep enough to ski. Is that a hazard for a hiker? Yeah. So if you see ski areas, think, I got to have my snow tools, traction device, self-arrest device, and in a brain that can evaluate risk before you get out onto it. Yeah, wonderful benefits, but there are more risks. If you go in early, you can, but just think increased avalanche danger.
Would you expect by mid-June for things to be pretty consolidated? Hiking around the Sierras, 10,000, 11,000?
That is a great question. I love these questions. They're great. Thanks, Stephen. It will most definitely be, well, not only consolidated, but you're in the thaw. If the thaw starts around, typically I'm in there, or I have been in there every year teaching during May 1st to July 1st. So I've been able to kind of mentally make notes of when the thaw starts after drought winters and normal winters and heavy winters. So they will usually start around the last week of May after a drought winter, and maybe middle of June after a heavy winter. But even that isn't cast in stone. So by mid-June, your question has to do with mid-June, you will most likely be on consolidated snow as long as the nighttime temperatures are below freezing. If the nighttime temperatures are above freezing, even when you get going at, say, you're looking at it from the summer hiker's point of view, you don't start hiking till like 6 or 7 in the morning, you could be starting out in post-holing snow. And now, will you post-hole very far? Probably not, because the pack underneath is consolidated. Don't realize that obviously the solar radiation, the surface of the snow is going to melt first. It percolates down through the pack and hits the ground and runs into the creeks, and the creeks rise and all that sort of junk. So you will post-hole deeper and deeper as the day goes on, as that radiation penetrates the snowpack, and then it just becomes a wallow fest and it's a drag. You will probably not have consolidated snow by mid-afternoon. Consolidated implying that it will hold your weight. Did that answer you, Stephen?
Yeah, that answers. Thank you.
Yeah. Next. Come on, guys. Unmute yourselves. Down in the lower left-hand corner. At least for me. And if you can't, and you got a good question, write it out, because I've got the chat open and I can see you guys. Oh, okay. Amir asked another good question about the snow north of Paradise Valley Cafe. Okay, here we're talking about snow line. If the snow line is, and it probably will be come middle of March in Southern California, probably up around 7,000 feet, 6,000 or 7,000 feet. So look at your map. When you leave Paradise Valley Cafe and you're either climbing up the Desert Divide or you're climbing up Devil's Slide Trail to get to Saddle Junction, where you take a left and you go north to Canada on the PCT, you will cross that elevation. Depending upon which way that face of the mountain faces, whether like Devil's Slide Trail is a western aspect, so it faces the west. What happens on western aspects? Hot afternoon sun. That aspect of the mountain will probably melt out faster, therefore have a higher snow line. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but you'll think about it and I'll see you next meeting. Southern aspects gets hot solar radiation all day. So they are going to melt out even faster, therefore have higher snow lines, meaning you're going to have to go all up the mountain much further to a higher elevation before you find the snow. So western and southern aspects of the hill melt out faster. Northern is the slowest, and eastern gets morning sun, so that's not quite as slow. So on the northern and eastern sides of the hill, like Apache Peak, going up Desert Divide, north of Paradise Valley Cafe, where you're first going to run into steep, slippery snow and a hard, consolidated pack that you can slip on, therefore the need for hiking crampons. I I know everybody wants to carry the least amount of weight, but when it's your life, I would not trust micro spikes unless you can guarantee that you have the ability to walk on a flat surface made by somebody else's footprint. That was the problem that Trevor had a few years back when he slid to his death. And now there's the Trevor's Spikes program that offers 20% discounts on micro spikes to PCT through hikers, so they at least have something. And you pick up your spikes through the mountaineering store in Idlewild. I don't mean pick up, I mean you buy them there. So if you have a boot track, micro spikes, fine. But if you don't, anticipate to hit snow on your climb up the Desert Divide before you get to San Jacinto, because aspects of that ridge, you're following a ridge, aspects of that ridge are on the eastern side. The trail is on the eastern side of the ridge and goes around like Apache Peak, goes around the peak on the northern side, the shadowy, shady side. It's steep, it's in shade, it doesn't get a whole lot of radiation, and it stays cold because it doesn't get the sunlight. So those have the potential for being dangerous. How do you get around that? Exactly that. When you look at your map, people don't know how to look ahead because their little screens on their app only show a couple miles either side. Yeah, they can zoom out, but they lose the detail to identify where the contour lines are going and whether there's a bump, whether there's a steeper pitch, that kind of thing. You lose the detail when you don't have the ability to maintain, how do you say, the scale. You want to have a very detailed scale, so you have to be zoomed in to see the details. But if you stay zoomed in, you can't see that you could avoid this whole Apache Peak thing by walking the ridge. You come up to Apache Peak from the south, you'll have higher snow lines. So you may get all the way up to Apache Peak almost before the trail cuts across to the east, where you may have more snow. And then the trail cuts back to on the northern side of the peak, goes over an arm, and now you're on the northern side. Well, there's nothing saying you can't go cross country where the trail isn't to save your life because you're not prepared to deal with snow and ice. Follow the ridge. Ridges and valleys are the safest places to walk when it comes to steepness. The top of the ridge isn't like a knife edge. It's usually more rounded. Walk on the ridge. Oh, but there's no snow, so it's going to be boulders and bushes. Well, you got to wiggle your way between the boulders and the bushes or find a safer route. But you're at least not going to be risking your life on the trail with the ice. So there are safer routes. You can do route finding as soon as you get your mind off the fact that you don't have to be on the trail all the time. If something is dangerous ahead, go around it. Did we kill that?
Can I jump in here for a second?
Yeah, anytime.
So I'm a big fan of the old half mile maps, which you've now got to dig around for online. But Half Mile had these wonderful PCT maps, and he actually shows a road walk around for every one of these SoCal peaks if you're going super early season and there's a ton of ice and snow and danger and you're not carrying your tools.
Yep.
There are plotted road walks. So, if that's a concern, that's another option. And the Gut Hooks app, everybody will be posting, hey, there's ice up on Fuller Ridge. So you'll know it well in advance. It's not going to be a surprise.
In 1974, when I did the PCT, we had to road walk around all this stuff. First of all, there wasn't a trail. So if I didn't have a dirt road to follow, if I didn't have the California riding and hiking trail, which was only here and there, we had to walk highways. And that's just the way it was. And a lot of times that took us around things like San Jacinto and San Antonio and Mount Baldy and that whole area around Wrightwood. I had to walk highway too. So it was a drag, but there are other ways. If you're not prepared, there are other safer ways. So
yeah,
look at them.
I've been watching this for years, and I don't think there's ever been a year where you can hike the PCT and not have to do a highway walk around because of a wildfire or some other thing. So you can try to be as much of a purist as you want, but I don't think there's ever been anyone who's truly walked the entire,
I don't
I mean,
think so.
correct me if I'm wrong, but who's ever walked the absolute PCT route.
You would have to have dry trail pretty much most of the way to be able to say I walked every foot of it. Hey, Lisa,
no
I do see your hand up, Lisa, so I want to get to you. But this is an adventure. Yes, there is a trail there, but you don't be a purist. You're out there to have fun. Keep it fun. If you got to walk around an obstacle like a fallen tree or whatever, yeah, you missed a few feet of the trail. Are you serious? You're going to go stick your feet underneath that tree to make sure that you walked every foot of the trail? No, you're going to. So you'll get over that. Anyway, I want other people have questions. Thanks, Ethan. Where did she go? There you are, Lisa. Unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi.
Can you explain? So you've said it a couple times about microspikes and following a foot
Boot track.
flat. Can you explain, and I know the answer, but maybe others don't, why microspikes are not good on sloped terrain? Okay.
Yesterday we actually, the question always comes up. I bring along a piece of plywood to simulate a steep, hard surface. And I will put a pair of micro spikes on a boot or a shoe. And I don't have any of my stuff with me. Say you've got, a steep slope. And because you are early in the season, you don't have a flat boot track to walk in. So now you're putting your feet on this inclined surface. And you think, okay, yeah, the little teeth on the bottom of the micro spikes will grab because the surface is frozen snow. It's crunchy. The teeth will get a bite. I'll be safe. You can't, because it's hard, you can't edge in. Your shoes are soft. You have to walk with your shoe flat on the surface. Now you're completely relying upon those teeth to hold you to the surface. You can't edge in and create a knife edge to hold you to the hard surface. So now with your feet flat on a hard inclined surface, with this device held onto your feet by a rubber band, essentially, think about where your foot and shoe want to go. When you're on an inclined surface, your foot wants to go downhill. You're pushing against the rubber band. Your foot and shoe are pushing against the rubber band inside the circle of the rubber band. So the rubber band is gonna want to roll over or roll under or slide under your foot. So that's why when you don't have a flat surface to stand on, you're on an incline, it is not safe because your foot is going to push against the rubber band and slide right out of the rubber band. So that's why a hiking crampon that has metal, especially at the ball of the foot, there'll be metal connections. You're standing on a steel platform, but there are metal risers. With hiking crampons, then your foot is then going to be pushing against the steel, not the steel underneath. Obviously, you're doing that, but your foot will slide against the frame, so to speak. Call it a frame. There's walls to this, and you stay in your hiking crampon. You don't come out of it. So that's why microspikes can be such a hazard. When we were product testing, and we had no problems with them all the way up to, God, where did we? The side of Olancha Peak, which is like what, a day out of Kennedy Meadows. But because it was all snow covered and was finally steep enough, we started realizing that we were sliding out of our microspikes. And as soon as you're out of your microspikes, usually the downhill foot, you've got nothing. You've got no traction whatsoever. So you hit the deck and you fall. If it's not that steep, you don't go very far. Spreading your body out over the whole surface adds more traction, and you come to a stop. Maybe you punch through into the bushes that are right there and you come to a stop. But we realized that, okay, hey, it ain't gonna work. So we started using our shoelaces to strap together the rubber band across our instep, across the high point of the lower part of your foot, to keep that rubber band up there. We thought, this will do. And so the next steep area we went across, it was like It's gonna be great. So we hit it a little harder, but not really, and they didn't work. You can go down a slope, toe first. They work just fine. You can go up a slope because the microspikes wrap around your toes and your heels, but they are totally vulnerable and weak on the sides. When we talked to Catula later, Catula said, "Oh my God, you guys, we never intended those things to be used in that manner. They're designed for walking around icy city sidewalks and maybe doing a little snow running on flat surfaces where you're going heel toe. But this sideways stuff," they said, "No, they're not going to work." So what's happening here is that the gram counting, ounce counting environment that wants to have the lightest pack is sacrificing safety to have a device that does not work for where you're going. But they'll do it anyway, hoping that that they now can walk in somebody else's footprints. But think about this, as long as you're on the trail, you have footprints. But what if you got to go to the bathroom and everything around you is kind of steep? Working your way past some trees and around through some tree wells and stuff, it gets steep. Am I going to slide out of my microspikes just to get to a place where I can go to the bathroom? It's like, so stuff like that happens too. Just pony up and carry a little more weight and have some, like Catula's hiking crampons, the K10 for a flexible shoe and the KTS for a stiffer shoe. Just do that and have that confidence of a frame that's up along the side of your feet, that if your shoe wants to slide on the frame, it's going to run into the steel and you're not going to come out of your hiking crampon. Did that kill it, Lisa?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking. Okay, who's next? What time is it? It's 11:57. Unmute yourself and talk away. I can look in the chat too.
I'll ask another question.
Okay.
If we're on the subject of snow. Snow baskets on trekking poles. Can you kind of elaborate why it might be good to have them? I mean, it's an additional piece of stuff to carry, but why might that be good?
Excellent question, because people who are not familiar with the consistency of snow and the layers of snow will not understand that they're little mud cups that they have at the bottom of their summer hiking poles that are about the size of a tangerine or something like that in diameter. Those little things will simply punch right through the surface of the snow. You're hanging onto the pole, expecting it to allow you to have an extended reach onto the snow to maintain your balance of your upper body. So you stab into the snow to catch your balance, and the basket just plunges in. Therefore, you fall over. You have to have something broader on the bottom of your pole to catch more snow if the snow is soft. Now, if it's icy, sure. We used to have these baskets that were hard plastic, and they were cone shaped, and they had teeth around the perimeter of the cone to grab ice. We thought that was all killer. And when it became really, really icy, it didn't make any difference. It was slippery. So those kind of went by the by. But just a big snowflake, 3-4 inch diameter snow basket is pretty much workable for all snow conditions, no matter how soft, until it gets during the thaw, when you've got 2 feet of powdered goo on top of a snow layered way down deep in the snowpack, and you're going to punch through that all the way to the snow layer. So have as big a basket as you can, and bring a backup one, because periodically when you pull your pole out of a snow layer, it'll rip your basket off, and your basket will stay in the snowpack, and you're not going to go like, I'm not getting on my hands and knees in this stuff to try and find my snow basket. So bring therefore, now you don't have a snow basket and your pole is useless. So bring a backup. Did that answer that, Lisa? Maybe?
Yes, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Somebody had a question about this, let's see, sign off, temperature drops. Wind chill. A question about wind chill. Once the thaw starts, you no longer have overnight temperatures in the teens. You have overnight temps in the upper 30s with daytime temps approaching 70. So if you're going to enter the Sierra during June, going into July, I mean, yeah, you can have wind chill no matter what. You can have wind chill on 60 degrees and suffer from hypothermia. In hypothermia, you have no idea, you yourself, that you're suffering from it, except for you're shivering. But when the shivering goes away, you're done. Your friends will notice that you're not thinking right, you're not moving right, you're not as coordinated as you used to be. But when the mentation, when the thought process goes, that's when people die. In your core temperature, implying that your core temperature is getting below whatever number it needs to be. It doesn't, I don't need to quote a number, but once the shivering stops, you're in serious, serious trouble. Wind chill can happen no matter what, but if the ambient temperatures are fairly high in the 60s and 70s, like during June and July, not a big deal. You will have wind before and after every storm. You also have thermal gradient wind. So you have, what I'm talking about is pressure gradient wind. A low pressure system that brings rain and snow is different from a high pressure system which brings sunny weather. When the two collide, you get serious wind. So that means when you see high winds and you feel high winds coming in, either a storm is approaching, is passing you, or has already gone by you. Because as the high pressure comes in after the low pressure goes overhead, so it's right after the snowstorm or rainstorm, the winds pick back up again. That's why it's a collision of pressure systems. But you also have another thing that'll cause wind, and it's a temperature gradient wind. This Pacific Crest Trail is right next to the San Joaquin Valley. And on the other side, it's high desert Nevada. A lot of hot air rising, a lot of different temperature over there on both your right and left, so to speak. So you've got a lot of hot air rising in the valleys coming off the San Joaquin Valley to your west and rising up from the high desert of Nevada on your east. So that wind creation, the heat, the rising heat creating wind will cause a wind chill when it hits the colder areas, when the hot air pushes the cold air up above, and that'll cause you to have hypothermic conditions that are more local. Like in that valley of rising hot air down below is now pushing the cold air above it, and you feel like, oh my God, it's getting really cold. What's going on? And that's a temperature gradient wind, and it's always going uphill. So if you're in a valley and the wind is blowing up that valley, that's probably why there's no wind in the morning, but there's wind in the latter part of the morning. Maybe wind around noon. It's the heat off the desert in the San Joaquin Valley rising up the canyons, and you get a wind in the afternoon. So that's a temperature gradient wind, but it can cause bodily conditions where you're getting cold. So just to layer up, have an extra shirt or something hanging on your pack, a shell nearby, and just be aware that if it is a pressure gradient wind, you start seeing some cloud sign that maybe a storm is coming. And maybe I don't want to go over the pass, or maybe I want to stay down below tree line. Maybe it's summer and thunderstorms are building. Maybe it's not a pressure gradient. Maybe it's that I got clouds building overhead, and when those white clouds turn into black clouds, it's like I don't want to be above tree line and risk lightning strikes. So I know I've diverged there, but I hope that answered. I think that was Amir's question. Now unmute yourselves if you got something. All I got is the chat to look at if I can't hear you. I thank you for attending. Obviously, I want to try and tell you as much as I possibly can so that you stay safe. The whole intention, thanks, Ethan. The whole intention of what I do, and let's just sign off with this, is to
Ned, I was going to ask you if you can briefly, before you sign off, talk about the upcoming snow training event at Idlewild.
Okay, these events are held almost every Saturday, top of the tram coming out of Palm Springs up at 8,400 feet. We ran the first one yesterday, had some administrative glitches, but we're still looking forward to staying on schedule in offering these classes. What they're all about is to teach you how to be aware and safe of aware of the conditions on snow in that environment. It's in a completely different environment than all the way up from Mexico in a high desert. So, and how to be safe moving on snow, traction devices, balance, self-arrest devices, glissading, the skills for traversing, descending, things that work, things that don't work. I don't mean things, I mean techniques that work and don't work. So you're really just bringing, as far as stuff to bring, you're bringing the cold weather clothes, gloves, extra socks, shoes maybe with edges so that you can learn how to edge. If you don't have shoes that have hard surfaces, hard edges, shoes, and that need to be tall enough that you can leverage these shoes over so you can dig an edge into the snow side. Then bring what you've got, and you may just be limited to walking in other people's footprints. But you'll find out what works and what doesn't work in real life conditions. The takeaway is the condition of the snow will dictate what you are able to do on it and in it. So you've got to kind of be aware, hey, snow changes. It's liquid water. It's water that's frozen. And it softens during the day and it freezes at night. And if it doesn't refreeze at night and then it's really soft in the morning, and then I'm going to be, it's going to be terrible. So turn into soup by afternoon during the thaw. So these classes are just to give you some hands-on experience with some guidance. And that's about it. So stay tuned for any future announcements regarding conditions to expect, whether the class can happen, because I have to cancel classes for a variety of reasons. And I'll let you know if a class has to be canceled for one thing or another, but they're free. They're open to the public. You'll have people out there that are just doing JMTs this summer and think they might run into a little snow. You got people out there that are PCT hikers walking in from Idlewild. And you'll have your summer people who just want to extend their hiking, their summer hiking seasons into fall and spring. So we got all kinds of folks. Did that answer your question, Amir? I assume so. I don't hear you. So
Yes, Ned, thank you very much. I just sent you a text.
okay, very good. I don't have that stuff. I do see something in the post. So thank you so much. But the whole point, and let's end with this, the whole point of what mountain education does, what I try and do as a passion of mine for free, is to give you the tools and knowledge necessary to keep you safe out there in all these conditions that could be life-threatening, so that you have a greater sense of confidence, a greater sense of safety and security, so that you stay out there longer, have more fun, and begin to establish a relationship with the wilderness, because it is real and it does occur. And talk to any thru hiker who has done it before, anybody who's been out there longer than 3 or 4 weeks. This relationship with nature changes people, and it's real. And I want you to feel that. So I'm just trying to bring you tools and knowledge to keep you safe out there, so you stay out there longer. And that's what it's all about. So I've got to run myself. It's 12 o'clock.
Thanks very much.
So I gotta zip too. Any final comments?
No, it was great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great talk, Ned. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks again, Ned.
Thanks, Ned.
Yeah. Thanks for seeing your happy faces again. I'm going to sign off if I can remember how. There we go. All right.
Thank you
guys.
much.